Hello BookTube. This is part 2 of my fairy tale project. Over the first few weeks of 2023, I have been reading the entirety of the manga series Fairy Tale by Hiro Mashima. I started January 1st, and I am currently working my way towards the conclusion. As I mentioned in my post-fairy tale TBR, I should finish Fairy Tale this coming Monday. So for this past week, which for the first 2 weeks of January, my weekly reads is being taken over by Fairy Tale. Although I will be putting the date in a parentheses in the title. But anyway, so I've been working my way through Fairy Tale by Hiro Mashima. For those of you who don't know, Fairy Tale is a manga series, shonen series. It's aimed at middle grade and young adult boys, young men. And it's a battle manga, which means a significant amount of the story is composed of fighting. So Fairy Tale is a fantasy series set in a world called Earthland, in the kingdom of Fiori. Earthland is a world awash in magic, including humans who have the ability to use magic, and many of these magic users, wizards, have joined together in guilds to go on jobs that require magicians or a wizard's work. And one of these guilds is the eponymous Fairy Tale. Fairy Tale is infamous for the quirkiness of its members and for their destructive power. No Fairy Tale wizard is as destructive as Natsu Dragnel. He is a fire dragon slayer. One day, while he and his companion Happy are looking for Natsu's adoptive father, the dragon Ignil, they meet a young celestial spirit wizard named Lucy Heartfilia, and Natsu invites Lucy to join Fairy Tale. Later, this trio are joined by Urza Scarlet, the most powerful woman in the guild, and Grey Fullbuster, a rival of Natsu's, to form the most powerful team, or one of the most powerful teams in the guild, and also one of the most destructive. I've often mentioned that Fairy Tale is one of my favorite manga series, and this rereading has borne that out. So, over the past week, I have read from volume 21. My plan was to read these volumes, since it's divisible by 3, in 3-volume batches. Fairy Tale has 63 volumes. So during the work week, I would read 3 volumes, and then during the weekend, I would read 6 volumes in 3-volume halves. Unfortunately, last Friday, things went a bit awry, and I couldn't get to volume 21. So I read volume 21 the following Saturday. And so I read from volume 21 through to volume 48. And I've had a blast. So, as I did last week, I will talk about some of the arcs that I've encountered during my readings, and also talk about the characters and various other thoughts about Fairy Tale. Now, I will not be covering the arc that volume 48 is a part of. I'm going to save that arc for next Friday, when I complete my Fairy Tale trilogy of videos. Even though I am loving this arc, even though there's like 1 or 2 volumes left of it, it's fantastic. But anyway, moving on. So Before I start talking about the Daedalus arc, the arc that started in part in Volume 20, I do need to backtrack some because if I remember, I think I forgot a very important character who was introduced in the Oresian Sace arc, and that is Wendy Marvel. So in the Oresian Sace arc, in order to fight one of the three corners of the Balaam Alliance, an alliance of powerful dark guilds that control the magical underworld in the setting, Fairy Tale allies with three other guilds. Blue Pegasus, whose master is an old friend of Makarov's, Lamia Skell, whose some of their former members were antagonists in the Galuna Island arc, and Kate Shelter. So Wendy Marvell and her companion Carla, who is an anthropomorphic cat much like Happy, and she herself is a sky dragon slayer. She was raised by the dragon Grandini. She's the lone representative from Kate Shelter. And it is later at the end of the Oresian Sace arc, Kate Shelter dissolves. Or literally. And Wendy joins Fairy Tale as the sort of a later addition to the primary team. Whereas, say, Juvia and Gajil will appear for parts of an arc, or for an arc. Wendy, pretty much from this point on, is a constant main character. And that starts pretty shortly after she joins the guild. One of the most powerful members, and one of the older members, Gildarts, comes to check in with the master. While this happens, a portal to another world opens above the city of Magnolia, where the Fairy Tale Guild is located, and it sucks up the guild and the entire city and turns it into a giant lacrima crystal. Lacrima crystals are magical crystals that can be imbued with magical power. The only wizards who aren't turned into lacrima are the dragon slayers. Natsu, Wendy, and eventually Gajil shows up, although he's not with the Natsu and Wendy initially, and Carla and Happy. So Carla has, in addition to having wings, as all of her species has, she also has prophetic abilities. And this allows her to have some idea of what's going on. Basically, the portal came from a world called Daedalus, in which magic is it's more of a finite resource than it is in Earthland. And the humans of Daedalus can't use magic, but magic can be imbued into objects. But the magic is running out. And so the king of Daedalus has been using these portals to try to suck up magic from Earthland, to sort of leech magic from Earthland. And this portal, a particularly big one, targeted Magnolia. So Natsu, Wendy, Happy, and Carla travel to Daedalus to rescue their friends. They meet the Daedalus version of Fairy Tale and eventually make their way to the capital. While they're traveling, they meet Lucy, who was protected by, I think, Orlogium, and then she met up with Mystigan, who is revealed to be the Jalal Fernandez from Daedalus. And Lucy is able to use her magic because she's a celestial spirit wizard using keys to summon celestial spirits. So she joins Natsu and Wendy, Happy and Carla. They're later captured by the Edalus army, and then Happy and Carla learn that they are Exceeds, a species of anthropomorphic cats who have the ability to sprout wings and occasionally have other powers as well. Natsu and Happy, not Natsu, Carla and Happy flee Extalia, the floating island where the Exceed live, and work to rescue Wendy, Natsu, and Lucy. Initially rescuing Lucy, while Natsu and Wendy are being tortured since they are dragon slayers. There's a certain use that the king has for them. During this, the Edalus royal government turns on the Exceed, and basically their plan is to not only murder the inhabitants of Magnolia, including Fairy Tale, but also to exterminate the Exceed. They are some of the worst villains Mashima has created in a number of ways. Eventually, Gajil managed to use his powers. So initially, Wendy and Natsu can't use their powers, but Mystigan has sort of developed a method to allow Earthland wizards to use their powers in Edalus. And he initially gave it to Gajil, who freed Urza and Gray from the Lacrima and gave them the X balls so that they could use their magic, and then they gave it to Wendy and Natsu. And so there's a series of battles, and eventually the team manages to prevent Magnolia from crashing into Extalia, and Jalal Mystigan reverses the anima to send all of the magic from Edalus into Earthland, including the Exceed, and including a young woman who initially seems to be the Edalus counterpart of a character in Earthland who had died, but who she really didn't die. But anyway, so the Edalus arc isn't. So the Edalus arc was the first arc that I followed in real time with Fairy Tale. And I like it, but I do have some issues with it. I didn't connect with the villains as much, but there were some really awesome fights. And I think maybe the arc went a little too long, but there were some awesome fights. The fight between Urza and her Edalus counterpart are amazing. The fight between the King of Edalus and the combined might of Natsu, Wendy, and Gajil is very well done. And so I kind of want to show some images of this one. Let me go to the scene where Gray and Urza sort of reappear after being absent for so many chapters. Okay, wonderful double page spread. And also one of the fight double page spreads between the fight with Natsu, Wendy, Gajil, and yeah. Where is it at? Oh. I'll find it eventually. But yeah, it's oh. Here's some of the fight between the Urzas. Before I find the So in the Daedalus arc, Urza actually serves the royal army, and she's a nasty piece of work. So there we go. So yeah, the Daedalus arc starts off a bit slow, but once it reaches a climax, it does get really good, particularly the fairy tale send off for Mystigan. So there are a few major changes after the Daedalus arc. And in a way, the Daedalus arc is one of the character history arcs since it explores Happy's history. So one of the changes is that Mystigan, one of the most powerful members of Fairy Tale, is gone. Another one is that Lysana, the sister of Mary Jane and Elfman, is revealed to be alive and has returned to Earthland. And, well, Natsu has Happy. Wendy has Carla. Kajil doesn't have an Exceed. But he gets one in Panther Lily, who was an exiled Exceed who was serving the royal army. But it was took to Kajil, and they become as strong a companion as Natsu and Happy and Wendy and Carlin. It is. Panther Lily is a fun character. He has the ability to grow into a much more muscular, larger version than most Exceed. So that's pretty much what happens after the Daedalus arc. Now, one thing is that Fairy Tale is, at this point, a bit undermanned. There were very few S-class wizards, the elite of the guild. Laxus has been expelled. Mystigan has effectively resigned. So that leaves only Guildarts, Urza, and Mary Jane. So that leads to the next arc, the Sirius Island arc, which is, I would say, one of the best arcs in Fairy Tale. And it begins with Makarov selecting 8 Fairy Tale wizards to take an exam to determine whether or not they are ready to become S-class. And then they are allowed to select partners to help them. So the 8 wizards and their partners are Natsu, who selects Happy, Gray, who selects Loki, Juvia, who selects the returned Lysana, Levy, who is cajoled to pick Kajil, Freed, who selects Bixlow, Ulfman, who is basically cajoled to pick Evergreen, because she's a bit miffed that Freed picked Bixlow. Canna, who selects Lucy, and a new character named Mest, who for some reason selects Wendy, which is perhaps the one drawback of the arc. Is I'm not entirely sure. Wendy's participation probably shouldn't have. I mean, it's understandable why you want all of the core cast and some of the major supporting characters to be on the island for the arc. But anyway, so initially the Sirius Island arc is just a promotion arc. And so the first round is a mix of battles, and one is a clear path. So basically, the first trial is each team selects a path. This path will either lead to safety and a clear on to the second round, or battles between other candidates or one of the remaining S-class wizards. So Lucy and Kanna face Freed and Bixlow, and Freed and Bixlow throw that fight because of what happened in the Fairy Tale Civil War. Gray and Loki defeat Mest and Wendy. Urza demolishes Juvia and Lasana. Elfman and Ever basically trick Mara Jane into being defeated, though it's never seen. And Gildarts passes Natsu. And Levi and Gajil took the safe route. So the second round is interrupted by the appearance of a mysterious young man who is later revealed to be Zeref, a dark wizard who is infamous for creating any number of demons and all sorts of chaos. The resurrection of Zeref was the goal of Jalal in the Tower of Heaven arc. And at that time I said that Jalal wasn't dead. And then so he's wandering around in a state. Grimoire Hart, one of the other members of the Balam Alliance, believes that Jalal is in a sleeping state and that they've collected keys to wake him up. As I said in the Tower of Heaven arc, Jalal wasn't dead. And unfortunately for Grimoire Hart, neither was he sleeping. He was just on one side of his magically induced mental illness. But the Dark Guild Grimoire Hart discovers that Zeref is on the island and they invade, which leads to the bulk of the arc. And so Grimoire Hart is led by Master Hades, who in an earlier life was known as Precht, who was in fact the second guildmaster of Fairy Tale. Under Master Hades are a cadre of powerful wizards. The second in command is Blue Note Stinger, who has the ability to manipulate gravity, and then there are the seven kin of Purgatory, 7 young wizards raised by Hades and given and taught lost magics. Their leader is Ultir, who is a recurring antagonist. She has the ability to manipulate time. Her adopted daughter, or younger sister, Marudi, who is an empath. There's also Zankuro, a fire god slayer. Kane Hikaru, who uses a voodoo doll. Zankuro, I already said Zankuro. Caprico, who is a wizard possessing the celestial spirit Capricorn. Azuma, who has the ability to manipulate plants and create explosions, and Rescue Rose, reality warper. So they invade Sirius Island, and through a series of fantastic battles that don't always go in Fairy Tale's way, eventually Fairy Tale defeats Grimoire Hart with the so let me highlight some of the interesting battles. One is a battle between Makarov and Hades. That was really good. The fight between Zankuro and Natsu. The fight between Elfman Endeavor versus Rusty Rose, and then the later Freed, Bixlow, Lasana, Levy, and Elfman against Rusty Rose is really good too. The fight between Gray and Ultir is amazing. The final fight between the core team of Natsu, Lucy, Urza, Gray, Wendy against Hades with the appearance of Laxus is absolutely wonderful. And it's an amazing arc. Just absolutely amazing arc. And the ending is something else. Grimoire Heart's actions summons something unforeseen. The dragon Acnologia, who attacks and seemingly destroys the island and everyone on it. So this pretty much introduces the two main antagonists for the rest of the series. On the one side, Zeref, and on the other, Acnologia. And so some of the scenes I wanted to show from this one is see, here's an enraged Makarov facing the Grimoire Heart's airship. But there's one with Hades. Yeah. Which is an amazing scene. Oh yeah, and this is a wonderful double page spread too. If you go to the one with and there's Zankro going crazy. See if I can get the Tower of Dingir. And then there's that. This is one of my favorite images of Fairy Tail, along with like the first appearance of Gray and Urza and the Edalus arc, and then that. So yeah, and also that there, really good. Then one of the this is another one of my favorite images from Fairy Tail, where the core team is about to fight Hades. And then that. So yeah, it's wonderful arc. Oh yeah, that too. But yeah, this is a wonderful arc. While it looks like Fairy Tail has been this core cast of Fairy Tail has been destroyed, in actual fact, they were placed in suspended animation by the first guild master, Mavis, and they are put into suspended animation for 7 years. 7 years later, the spell is broken and Ceres Island is restored, and the lost members return to Fairy Tail, and they find a fairy tale that has fallen on hard times. What was once the strongest guild in Fiore is now the weakest. And they decide to work their way back to the top. Laxus is reinstated into the guild, and they eventually decide to join the Grand Magic Games, a mix of a tournament and the Olympics. So at first there's a series of sort of finding the sort of recentering after this long time skip, and also some training so that the members can, so that the core cast can sort of get pretty much rise up to the current level. And then it's the Grand Magic Games, which is pretty much nearly 10 volumes of a story. It is incredibly complex and intricate, and there's an A and a B plot to it. So I'll focus on the Grand Magic Games themselves and then talk about the other plot that goes along with it. So initially, there's a preliminary that's a giant maze. And the first 8 teams that go through the maze advance to the primary Grand Magic Games. So from Fairy Tale, the team is Urza, Natsu, Lucy, Gray, and Wendy. However, Wendy is injured and is replaced by Elfman for part of the games before Wendy replaces him after he's injured. Also included are Quarto Cerberus, who hadn't been seen since the very early arcs, Blue Pegasus, Lamia Scale, all of whom have already been met. Also a new guild, Mermaid Heel, whose members, two of the members share a history with Urza, Kagura and Miliana, who appeared in the Tower of Heaven arc. Not Kagura, although Kagura's brother did. Also Raventail, a previously dark guild that had become legitimate. It is led by Ivan Dreyer, Makarov's son and Laxus's father, who has a lot of beef with Fairy Tale. And there's also Fairy Tale Team B, which is composed of Laxus, Mara Jane, Juvia, Gajil, and Mystigan, who is actually the Earthland Jalal. And of course, the new #1 guild in Fiore, Sabretooth, whose team is led by the twin Dragon Slayers, Sting and Rogue, and also Olga, Rufus, and Yukino, who is filling in for Minerva, the most powerful member of Sabretooth. So basically how the Grand Magic Games works is there's a competition. On the first day, it's a variation on tag. The second day, it's a race on a train. The third day is clearing a dungeon while making bets on how many monsters you can defeat. And on the fourth day, it's a water thing. It's like a water fight. And then after that competition, there's a series of battles. So 4 battles of the guilds. So the first day of the games, Fairy Tale doesn't do very well. They are defeated in the battles, and they don't really do well in the competition. The second day changes things, while Fairy Tail doesn't do much in the race because, well, for some reason, the Dragon Slayers were selected, which neither does Sabretooth, for that matter. But Fairy Tail does win their respective battles. Then on the third day, Fairy Tail pretty much kicks booty. And then on the fourth day, Fairy Tail does quite well as well. Now, as part of the Grand Magic Games, there's some competition. Obviously, Fairy Tail and Raven Tail do not get along, and Raven Tail is largely depicted as the main antagonist. But they are also quickly eliminated, and that sort of main antagonist in the games is shifted to Sabretooth, which is a guild that is, for all intents and purposes, what Fairy Tail would have been had Lexus won the Fairy Tail Civil War and did not go through his character development. It is, typified when Yukino loses her fight to Kagura and is forced to humiliate herself before the rest of her guildmates and expelled from Sabretooth. And this really pisses Natsu off to no end. And so when Natsu and Gajil face Sting and Rogue in the tag team battle on the fourth day, and Natsu and Gajil win, it sort of sets off a chain reaction in Sabretooth that results in a coup in the guild. And then on the fifth day is basically a survival game where 5 members of the team are basically battle until there's only one team remaining, which is an amazing sequence of fights, and has an interesting conclusion. But so it's pretty interesting. Now that's the A part of the Grand Magic Games. There's also a B part. Jalal and Ultir and Marudi have, in the 7 years, formed an independent guild called Crime Sorcière, which is basically vigilante. They target dark guilds. And they ask Fairy Tail to observe what's going on. That there's a darkness associated with the Grand Magic Games that's reminiscent of Azerath. And this leads to the B plot, in which a future villain has a scheme to try to take over Fiore in his past, the series' present, that is very, very well done. It is remarkable, particularly with Ultir's character development and sacrifice. It is amazing. So one of the images I wanted to show from that is, and so on the fifth day, to backtrack a little bit, Fairy Tail's team is composed of Urza, Laxus, Gajil, Juvia, and Gray. So basically, Raven Tail gets disqualified, and Fairy Tail is combined to one team. And you might be wondering, well, where's Natsu? Well, at a certain point, Lucy is arrested by the royal government. They need celestial spirit wizards for their operations, for their plan. And Natsu, Mary Jane, and Wendy go to rescue Lucy and Yukino. And so there's kind of that fight going on while the Grand Magic Games is going on as well. But yeah, some really interesting scenes. There's this during the Gajil Rogue fight. There's also, see if I can find the one between Minerva and, oh yeah, this is Jura versus Olga before Jura fights Laxus. Ooh. And then that's a wonderful scene. Oh yeah, that. It is quite satisfying watching Minerva get defeated in the Grand Magic Games. Even though she does get better, it takes a while for her to really quit being the psychopath that she was during her first introduction. But this scene here is amazing. So basically, all other competitors have been defeated. Fairy Tail has managed to not lose a single competitor, and there's one left, Sting, and he hasn't fought anyone. He is fresh, and the 5 members of Fairy Tail facing him have been put through hell. And this is them confronting him, and it is an amazing scene, just absolutely amazing. And sort of how that fight ends is just wonderful. And it really shows the character development of Sting, but yeah, so it's pretty cool arc. And so after the Grand Magic Games, there's a brief arc called the Sun Village that sees Fairy Tail go on a quick mission at the behest of one of Fairy Tail's founders to figure out why a village of giants has been frozen. While there, they re-encounter a former member of Raventail who pretty much reforms, and also have another encounter with Minerva, who's joined a dark guild. And it basically is a setup for the next big arc, Tartarus, which I will talk about next week. So for my next Fairy Tail recap, I will talk about the Tartarus arc, which I'm finishing up right now. It is amazing. And then the final 2 arcs. And then maybe a bit of wrap up, unless I go as hideously long with that video as I have with this one. I mean, it's 43 minutes, so I need to wrap it up for now. But yeah, I'm having a blast with Fairy Tail. So yeah. So next Friday I will conclude my Fairy Tail project. What I read from next Tuesday, I will talk about the following Friday, the 27th, which will be pretty much a week and a half weekly read. So anyway, until then, BookTube, thank you. Have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday with a new video. So until then, thank you, BookTube.